Before we start the video, a large thank you to Rowan, MD Zaya, Teague, Himiyat, Laura, Nicola, and Lance for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And an immense thank you to Halo Burner and Sora Stratos for their continued and immense support to the channel on Patreon. You guys are greatly appreciated, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello guys, and we're going to add kind of like a sleep state to the boss in this episode, so they won't do anything until they're awake basically. And to make it a little more polished, I've included a couple more animations. So if you guys are using DURK, just go ahead and use those. But essentially, I'm just going to make it simple. He's going to be kind of sitting down at first and waiting for someone to enter the arena. And he's going to rise and just kind of, take a stand before he fights you. So if you have any animations like that that will go well with your boss, if you're not using DURK, then go ahead and by all means place them in. If not, you don't need to animate this portion. You can still have a section where the fight becomes active, because we're going to do something else in regards to the boss health bar. So this portion is still very important. But I'm going to add in a couple animations. So it's a little bit of creative flair, and these can change depending on your boss. You don't have to have these, of course. You can just leave the animation states empty and just even say empty if you want and direct it back to that empty state right there. So I'm going to call the first one Sleep 01 and the second one Awaken 01. I'm going to make a transition from Awaken back to empty. No transition on the Sleep. So in that state, they're kind of just stuck there until they're waiting for the fight sequence to start. This is actually what a lot of Souls and the Elden Ring bosses do as well. That's why if you actually glitch into the arena and fight the boss, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those videos, but they kind of just stand there because they haven't been activated. You haven't passed through a trigger of sorts, so you can just kill them and they won't even fight you a lot of the time. So we're going to delete our debug wake up if you still have it there. I'm going to erase the update functionality on this script because we don't need any right now. We can use the base. We're going to keep our wake up function, but we're going to trigger that through new means, and we're going to add on to it a little bit as well. So here on the AI boss character manager script, I'm going to make a header. I'm just going to call this awake, or just status actually, because it includes defeated too. And then right below here, so below has been defeated, has been awakened, I'm going to make a serializable field string. I'm going to call this sleep animation, and a serializable field string for an awake animation. Now you could just put this on the DURK boss manager if you only want it for him or a specific boss. But like I said, if you don't want it for all your bosses, you can just say the string is empty and just direct yourself back to the empty state. So I'm going to keep it here in case you want it for all bosses. I tend to use this in pretty much all of my bosses personally. I'm going to paste any old network variable here, and we're going to replace has been defeated and has been awakened with a network variable. Now we don't need to make has been defeated a network variable yet. In the future though, we can use it to add some cool effects, but I'm going to do it because we are going to use it in the future, but we are directly going to use has been awakened as a network variable in this video right now. So we can do both. We're going to just, wherever you find an error, just add dot value, because it's going from a regular bool to a network variable. So we got to reference the value of the network variable. And then that will correct all of your errors. So why are we making these a network variable? Well, for has been awakened, we need the person who's joining to know if the boss has already been woken up before, so they play those proper animations. For has been defeated, in the future, we can use a onValue changed and kind of play some cool particles or effects, but that's a polish element, so we'll get that in the future, but it will be used in the future as well. Now, under wake boss, I'm just going to check for if is owner, and I'm going to copy the entire logic in here and put that within here for now, because that's going to be called through an event trigger, and we can trigger that on a client, so we're going to make sure we only run that logic if we are on the owner side. Now, on network spawn, we're going to say if we have not been awakened dot value, then we're going to right away play the target action animation, and we're just going to play the sleep animation, and we're going to set it to true for is performing an action. So again, if the boss has not been awake now, they will enter the world and immediately play this sleeping animation. Now, I'm going to just go down here now and copy this logic, and I'm going to go under wake boss. And what we can do without checking for owner is we can say if we have not been awakened here, then we're going to play the awaken animation. This just assumes if the boss has already been awakened, they're standing there idly, not playing their sleeping and waking animations. So if the boss hasn't been woken up before, we want to first wake it up, and then we want to play the awaken animation. Now, since this will send a server RPC, we can actually just put this under the if is owner, because the owner sends a server RPC whenever they play an animation. And make sure, yeah, we're going to delete this because I see we already have the has been awakened inside here. So all we're going to do is just put this right above here and then set the awakened status after. So the order of operations does matter there. Okay, cool. That looks good. Let's save that. So everything should be working now in terms of waking up and sleeping. We just need to go now and make a sleep state. There's a billion ways you can do this. I'm only making the state. It's going to be empty because I don't want the boss to look for a target until the boss event has started. you don't need to do this. You can just use a bool. You can do, like basically not allow it to find a target until the event is active, whatever you want. I like using states because they're very easy, straightforward, and clean. So all I'm going to do is make this drive from the AI state, and I'm going to return basically nothing. Just override the tick and don't change it at all. And basically, instead of starting in the idle state, we're going to start on this sleep state, which again will do nothing. And then when we start the boss event through use of a trigger, we're going to transfer to the idle state. So I'm going to create an asset menu, AI states boss sleep. I'm going to go to DURK's state folder. I'm going to make a new AI state for boss sleep. I'm going to call it DURK sleep, or just DURK sleep state. I'm going to go make a header under the AI boss character manager. I'm going to call it states, just like the header for states on the AI character manager. I'm going to make a serializable field for the boss sleep state. I'm going to call it sleep state. And then we want to basically initialize that, or instantiate a copy of it. So let's override the awake, and we're going to check if we're the owner. And we're going to say sleep state is equal to instantiate, and then we're going to instantiate the sleep state. And then we're going to set the current state to the sleep state. And since this is called after the regular wake method, it should override the setting of state idle. Make sure you make the current state a protected variable. That's under your AI character manager, so we can reference it from our AI boss character manager. And again, then current state is going to equal sleep state. All right, I'm going to test that just to make sure. I'm going to check for owners because we're not supposed to assign states if we're not the owner. All of the AI state logic should be done from the server, the host, not from any of the clients connected. Okay, so now under wake boss, just reading all this over, right here we want to say current state is equal to idle state right after we assigned has been awakened .value is equal to true. So current state is equal to idle. All right, let's save that. Now I'm going to go to my prefab. I'm going to insert my animation names and drag in the state. So if I go down here to the sleep state, DURK sleep state, and then the sleep animation for me is sleep 01. And the awaken animation is awaken 01. So think of the sleep event as only happening once, the first time you encounter the boss. At least that's how I'm going to set it up. And then every time you come back after, they'll just be standing there waiting for you. But you can have it happen every time if you want to. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to make DURK face us now because he's not in any danger of hitting us until we actually start the fight. So I'll change around the rotation of this AI spawner and make it face the fog wall. A little bit more dramatic looking. Going to save the scene now, and we're going to jump back over into the AI boss character manager. Make sure you initialize both of these variables for has been awakened and has been defeated as false. You do not want them defaultly set to true, and go to your prefab and make sure they're unticked. They should be set to false by default. Okay, if I go in here, DURK is standing here. That's good. That's working as intended. If I click on him, he should be in the sleep state. And no, he is not. So he's in the pursue target state, so I've messed up. And I think I know where. Yeah, so right here, you can't actually check for is owner on awake because this runs a lot of times before the on network spawn. So what you want to do is actually go over on network spawn. This is where we should be setting our states anyway, to be honest. So we're going to on network spawn, check for the owner, and then assign the state there. Likewise, we're going to go back to our AI character manager, and we're going to make a check for if is owner. And then we're going to assign the states and instantiate them after we spawn the character on the network. And we're only going to do this for the owner. So we copy all this. We're going to override on network spawn and just drop it off in there. So that way you're only assigning states and running them if you are the owner of the game object. So again, that will be on the server side. All right, now if I go into the game, we got DURK sleep. This is all working as is intended. If I walk in here now, he's not getting up, of course, because nothing happens. So let's make that happen next. We're going to use a thing I call an event trigger. So let's go ahead and create a 3D cube. It can be, honestly, any object. I just use the cube because the box collider is perfect for this. I'm going to set the cube to the size of the door, but I'm going to place it after the fog wall because in the future we want the fog wall to trap us in here when we enter. So for me, that's a scale of 4 on the X, 2 on the Y, 1 on the Z is fine, of course. And then I'm going to untick the mesh render, so we just have this box collider. I'm going to tick gizmos so I can see the outline of it. And then I'm going to make sure this is set to a trigger. Now, I'm going to set a layer for this because we're going to use more of these in the future. We can call it an event trigger, and this is just a trigger you pass through that will do something in the game. This one is just going to be for boss event triggering. So I'll set the layer to event trigger like so, and I'm going to rename this as something like, you can call it event trigger, wake DURK, event trigger, boss fight DURK, whatever makes the most sense to you, wake up DURK. And when that's done, let's go over to this trigger game object and let's add a new script to it. I'm going to call my script event trigger boss fight. I'm using the keyword event trigger because in the future we're going to use more of these to do different things in the game. This one's just specifically to trigger a boss fight. So I'm going to erase the start and update functionality and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. I'm going to call upon the onTriggerEnter function. So for those of you who don't know what this does, this is called whenever a collider passes through a trigger that's on this object. So we're going to go ahead and go to project settings now under edit, and we're going to make it so only the character layer will trigger this. Do that by going to physics, and right here where it says event trigger, this is basically the event trigger layer. Untick every box except for the one that says character. So this is basically all the layers, and this is what allows different layers to collide with one another. So right now the character is the only thing that will trigger collisions on the event trigger layer. So the only thing that will start this is if a character walks through it. Next, let's make a serializable field for an int for the boss ID. And like our fog walls, this is going to have an ID that matches our boss's ID. And then we're going to basically activate a boss fight depending on the ID in this trigger. So let's go to the World AI Manager. And right now we don't actually add any characters to our spawned in characters. So we haven't had a reason to yet. So let's get around to actually writing some logic to do that. So over here on the AI character spawner, when it says attempt to spawn character, what you want to do is say World AI Manager.instance. And then we want to reference this list and add something to it. So let's make a function to do that, just so we can make it really clean and make sure we're not getting duplicates and all that stuff. And what I'm going to also do is we're going to change this. Now you could use a game object, but let's make a public void add character to spawned characters list. And let's make this require an AI character manager. Like I said, you could just do a game object itself like this, and then you can get it inside this function. If you want to do that instead, that's also equally valid. But I'm going to use an AI character manager and just basically get that before I pass the game object. I'll get it from the game object. I'll show you what I mean momentarily. It will make more sense when I go back to the AI character spawner. So once we have the character, what do we want to do? Well, we want to check the list of spawned in characters and make sure it does not contain the character we're trying to add. If it does, we're going to return. If not, we continue and just add it to the list. Cool. So that will just populate our list every time we start the game here. And then we're going to say world AI manager.instance.add character to spawn in characters list. Now, we can get the AI character manager by saying instantiate a game object.get component AI character manager. And we just pass that. Okay, so it's giving me grief. Why is it giving me grief? Oh, AI, I forgot that word. There we go. All right, cool. So let's save that. Now, we're going to take this a step further, and we're going to duplicate this list and change the name to spawn in boss characters. Now what we're going to do basically is check every spawn to see if this character is a boss by using a cast. And if it is, we're going to add it to this list. And from that list, we will get a boss, which we can use to start our boss fight. So I'll make a header for bosses, and now down here, we're just going to say AI boss character manager, boss character, is equal to AI character as boss, or is equal to character as boss. AI boss character manager. And if that's not null, then we know this is actually a boss character, and we just add it to the list. We do the same thing. We check for duplicates, and if there's no duplicates, then we just add it. So from this list now of bosses, we're going to do a search, and we're going to basically return a boss character using their ID. And this is really cool, and we're going to use something I use in a lot of my item databases to quickly get stuff. It's very, very useful. So come right up top here, and we're going to say, I'm going to delete C management because I honestly don't know why that's there. We're going to say using system.link. And now there's a very, very, very simple function we can make to get a character from the list using their ID. So let's make a public AI boss manager function. We're going to call it get boss character by ID. We're going to make it require an integer ID because every boss has their own integer ID. That's how we save them in our save game data. We're going to say return spawned in bosses, first or default. And then we're going to call it boss. We're going to say it's equal or greater than boss.bossID is equal to this ID. Now, that might look weird to some of you, but what does this mean? Basically, we're checking this list of spawned in bosses. We're looking for the first one that matches the ID we're passing. And if it does exist, we're passing it back if it matches this boss ID that we've given it. Okay? So whatever boss with the ID in this list that matches the ID we're passing it, we pass back. Now, really simple, over here on event trigger boss fight, we simply say world AI manager dot instance dot get boss character by ID, boss ID. And we're going to make this a variable saying AI boss character manager boss is equal to this. And then we say if boss does not equal null, then we say boss dot awaken boss. I think it's called awaken. Yes, wake boss. So this is the function we made last time. And that's it. Now if I walk through this, it should wake them up. So let's go and jump into the game. Make sure our trigger ID is the same as our boss ID. It is, which is 0. I'm going to create a new folder for prefab. So I'm going to call this event triggers. Just going to put this one in here. So event trigger for DURK. Just going to save that right in there like that. And then I'm going to go to world managers, save my world object manager as a prefab because I forgot to do that. And I'm going to save the scene now and we can try this out. So I'm in here in the game. I'm going to run over now. And when I pass through this trigger, it should wake DURK up. And yes, it does. He rises. Cool. So that's working as intended. Next, we want to get a health bar down and have his name pop up on the screen. We're also going to make a system to support multiple health bars in case you want to fight multiple bosses at the same time. So we'll do that as well. All right, let's go over now to the player UI manager. I'm going to go to my HUD manager section, and I'm going to make a section to store the boss health bars. So I want mine in the middle of the screen personally, and you put yours wherever you want. I'm going to create an empty game object, going to call it boss health bars, and this is where they're going to be parented under. Going to hit this so it's the size of my full canvas, and I'm going to scale it in. I want it to be like the middle third of the screen personally, just maybe not even that much. So we'll say 440 from the left and 440 from the right. Now I'm going to tick this positioning icon and press the center. So now it just gives me a width of 1040 and a height of 1080. That looks good to me. All right, so I'm going to right click under this now, UI slider. This is going to be identical to our HP bar process, by the way, in terms of how we set this up generally. Boss health bar, and I'm going to just make this a size that I want it really, you know, set up the width and the however you want it to look. This is just kind of a stylization thing. I won't spend too much time on this. We'll say width 950, height 50 is definitely too much, maybe 35. 35 looks great. Now, we don't want to interact with this at all. Basically, it's going to be automatic. So I'm going to delete the handle and the handle slide area. Don't need that. Don't need that at all. And we're going to change a couple settings on the slider component itself. So over here, we're going to say transition is going to be not color tint. It'll be none. Okay. And this is fine. Make sure it works. Yes, it does. Now let's go to the fill. I'm going to change mine to red, like a darker red. And the fill area, or sorry, the background, just black. I am going to hit the fill, and I'm going to go over to the position, hold Alt, and stretch it to the size of the object that is a child of. I'm going to do the same thing too for the background and stuff, just so it's a little bit bigger. Okay, now I can downsize this again. So hit Alt, make the fill in the background the same size. Going to go to the height. I'd say maybe 25 now. Yeah, that looks 20 is really good actually. Okay, cool, that looks nice. Now I'm going to just darken the fill a little bit more, change the color a bit, and we're gonna add a text component now for the health. I mean, not the health, sorry, the boss name. So right click here, UI, Text Mesh Pro, and personally, I like making it the exact same length as the HP bar, and setting it so the text is kind of always favoring the left side here. So you can just extend that so it's just like that. That looks good, cool. And you can rename the component here if you want to, and you can kind of anchor that to the center if it's the same size of the bar. So yeah, that looks good. Rename this to boss name. That looks good. Now we're going to need to save this as a prefab, but first let's actually create a script on it. UI stat bar is what we already have. Let's make one called UI boss HP bar. Now the good news is we can make this derived from UI stat bar. So delete the start and update functionality, dropping your namespace as is per tradition. Make this derived from UI stat bar. So I think we'll get the same logic we had before. So let's just check this to make sure. So yeah, we got set stat and set max stats. That's perfect. That's really all we need. And we're getting the slider and all that stuff. Cool. All right, that's great. So we're going to add a couple more things that's going to be for the boss only, obviously. So let's make a public void enable boss HP bar, like so. Make it require an AI boss character manager, an AI boss character. And if you want to too, we can store this boss character locally up here as a variable, which I will do. So I'll make a serializable field, AI boss character manager, and we just call this boss character. Cool. All right. And actually, I'm going to rename this to just boss inside here. The word says AI boss. So we're going to say boss character is equal to AI boss. And now what do we need to do that's different from our character, or rather kind of the same? Well, we got to set our max HP and all that stuff. So let's say boss character dot AI character network manager dot current health dot on value changed plus equals, and we want to, every time that boss's health changes, we want to change the bar here. So let's make a function called on boss HP change. That doesn't exist yet, that's why we're getting an error. But we'll make that right now. So we can make that a private void. It doesn't need to be accessed from anywhere else, and we can say private void on boss HP changed, int for old value, and int for new value. And then we can just basically use set stat, which is on the base class of this, which is UI stat bar, and we pass the new value. That's it. Cool. Awesome. What's next? Because that's not it, of course. Let's make a public void, remove HP bar. And we can just simply destroy the object. And if you want, you can even make this require a time variable. So if you want to destroy it, say like a few seconds after the boss's death, not instantly. Float, time, and then we can just pass the time here. That's it. All right, cool. Still a couple more things to do here. Let's make an on destroy. We want to unsubscribe from this on boss HP change, so minus equals. Don't want to have any memory leaks or anything. Let's save that, and let's go now right below that. We still need to set up the max stat of the bar when this is added. And just in case you join late, of course, too, you want to sync the current health of the bar with the boss. So let's say that this gets triggered as you join someone's game, as the boss fight is already halfway progressed. Well, we'll just call here set stat again to the boss's current health. So we can say set stat, and we pass boss character, character network manager, and we're going to pass current health dot value. All right, cool. So the whole idea of this now is we're going to basically instantiate one of these boss HP bars for every boss that's in a boss fight, and then when they die, we remove them. So we're going to say get component in children. We got to say using TM Pro, because we got to set the boss's name using the text mesh pro component. So up here say using TM Pro, get component in children text mesh UGUI, and then we can say dot text is equal to the boss's name. We don't have a name variable yet. We'll make one in a bit, but for now we'll just say boss character dot name. That will be the name of the game object. All right, cool. So that, I think, is everything. Let's save this now. We'll know in a moment when we try it out. Let's go over to the, where is this to? AI boss character manager script. What I'm going to do now is copy this variable. We're going to make another network variable. What's this one for? This one's for boss event is active. So boss fight is active. Why do we need this? Well, we need a way to spawn and despawn the HP bar when this becomes active. And likewise, if you join late, we need a way to trigger this and spawn HP bar for anybody who joins your game. So on network spawn, boss fight is active dot on value changed plus equals. We're going to make a new function called on boss fight is active. We're going to call it is active changed. And this doesn't exist yet, but we're going to make it right now. Now what goes in here? Well, there's obviously more than just a few ways to do this, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. So first, on network despawn, call this an unsubscribe from this event that doesn't exist yet. And then let's make this functionality right now. So we're going to make it a private void. On boss fight is active changed. Bool old status, bool new status. Now what do we want to do? Well, we want to instantiate a health bar, right? We want to create one for every time or for every boss that is active in this fight. We want to put it under a certain point of the player's UI. Okay, cool. That's if the boss fight is active. Now, what do we want to do if it's not active? If it's not active, we want to delete the HP bar because we're certain that it already exists. Because if a fight was active and is switching to not active, then we want to get rid of whatever was there. So you could just keep track of it using an ID and then destroy it that way. But I'm going to show you a very simple way to do it, and because there's no point in overcomplicating this. Again, if you don't want to do it this way, it's okay. You can keep track of it using an ID and remove it that way. But for this one, all we need to do is check if the HP bar gets to 0 and then destroy it afterwards. Because if it gets to 0, then this boss is dead. And that portion of the boss fight is no longer active. Even if you have a couple bosses, this specific boss is no longer active. So we're going to say on boss HP changed if new value is less than or equal to 0, as in if the HP that just got updated is less than or equal to 0. We're going to remove the HP bar. We'll do it after like 2.5 seconds. So it's not instant. Gives it time for the death animation to play, and then you're good to go. Now, what next? Well, what happens if we have more than one? Okay, so if I go in here now and add a vertical layout group under the parent, I'm going to make this to lower center. Going to give it like, we'll say 50 from the bottom, so it's always like right there. That looks nice. We'll do 50 from the top too, just in case. You're never going to get it up that high, but just in case. Going to untick force expand. Look, if I duplicate it though, you can see it's right on top of the other one. Now, why is that? Well, I messed up, and the parent object, if we go inside this, the text is actually above it. So what you want to do is create an empty parent and make the empty parent the height of the text and the HP bar combined. So I'll call the empty parent boss health bar. I'll call the health bar object health bar. And then I'll take the boss name outside of that, just drag it out here. You want to get the height of, like I said, the health bar and the boss name, and equate that to the same size as the parent object. You can make the parent object a little bit bigger if you want, just to give it a little bit of space. So that way, when you duplicate this to simulate having multiple bosses in a fight, we'll say 2. It looks like this. That's a lot better. Cool, very nice. All right, so now delete one of those and save this OG health bar as a prefab. And let's go to the player UI HUD manager, and let's make 2 variables. Let's make a header first called boss health bar. And we want to make, I don't know why I have this in all caps, now I'm looking back at it. I'm going to quickly change that off video because that's going to bother me. 1 second. Okay, cool. All right, let's make a public game object for the boss health bar object that we're going to instantiate. And let's make a parent, because the parent is where we're going to instantiate it at. And that's where our vertical layout group is that we just made. So every time you instantiate it there, it just auto-organizes itself and sets up nicely for us. So save the boss health bar as a prefab, and then drag, you can delete the prefab from the UI then, drag your created prefab into the variable, and I'm going to rename this to boss health bar parent, drag that into. The parent is the thing that you have your layout group on, and now we're good to go. So now, on boss health bar fight, or on boss fight is active changed, we're going to say game object boss health bar is equal to instantiate. We're going to reference the player UI manager.instance.hud manager.boss health bar object. Put a comma. You can see it's going to ask me for a transform parent. We're going to reference the parent that we just made, which has that vertical layout group. So that will be boss health bar parent. And I'm going to space this out just so you can see it a little bit easier here, so it's not going right across my screen. What's next? Well, we just call the enable health bar functionality that we just made. So let's make a UI boss HP bar variable, call it boss HP bar, and we're going to say that is equal to boss health bar. In my case, it's get component in children because I have the script on the slider, which is a child of the parent, which is an empty game object. So then we're going to say boss HP bar, and we call that, what did we call that? If I go back, oh, enable boss HP bar. So, and we pass this because we're on the AI boss character manager script. So this means this AI boss character manager. And that's the wrong, there we go, that's the right variable. Okay, cool. Should be working as intended. Gonna look this over and save this. Gonna minimize all this. Oh, right here. On network spawn, we want to also say on boss fight is active changed, and then pass false, and then pass is active. Why are we doing this? Well, as we know, on value changed only gets called if the value changes. So if you join the boss fight is already active, we want to run this functionality so you get a HP bar. Otherwise, you won't get one, even though the boss fight will be happening. Okay, cool. That looks good. Now, I can't remember if we set up DURK's health or not, but I guess we'll see momentarily. Now, under wake boss 2, what you want to do is say boss fight is active.value is equal to true. And likewise, on process death coroutine, this is only under if you're an owner, by the way, because this is a network variable, so make sure you're under if is owner. Boss fight is active.value is equal to false. Okay, cool. Save that. One thing I forgot to do is make sure you say if is active or if new status. I'm going to say if boss fight is active.value, then you want to run this logic. You don't want to run it otherwise. Paste that in there. Looks good. All right, let's save that and try it out in game. So I'm in the game here now. Let's go through the fog wall, and we do get a HP bar. Looks kind of scuffed. Let's see what's going on. All right, 2D. If I go over here now, yes, DURK has no health, so that's why it's so small, but why is it in the center of the screen like that? All right, I'm just going to set up some health for DURK, and we'll investigate that again. So I'm just going to say 785. I'm just picking a random number, if I'm being honest. This does not matter at all. Just want to make sure it's working. Going to go back into the game here now, start off, go through the trigger event, and he gets up. There it is. His name is there. Okay, so let's investigate. Why are you resizing? The name is working. Is the width the same as the name? Like as in the width of the HP bar? I think I see what's happening actually. Yeah, so in the prefab here, go down, and you can see we have scale bar length with stats. That's for our character. Untick that. Okay, cool. Then save that. Should be working now. Before I go back in there too, actually, I'm going to make a new variable under the AI character manager. I'm going to call it just name or character name. I'll make a header for it called character name, public string, character name. And this is only if you want to use this for any kind of like HP bar purposes. Defaultly, I'll set it to nothing. And now instead of referencing the name of the game object, which is not ideal, we can say boss character dot character name. And now we can save that. We can give DURK a name. I'm going to call him DURK, comma, guardian of the prototype realms. All right, that's looking good. Let's save that and let's try this out in game. So if I run through here now, yes, his name is there. The HP bar is looking nice. Does it work? Let's hit him just to make sure. Gonna dodge that first and then take a swing. And yes, it does. Fantastic. All right, guys, there you go. That's another thing down for the boss fight sequence. It's looking pretty great. I wanted to get to the defeated screen again, but I don't realize how much time these videos take because I think we're over like 30 minutes now. So in the next one, we're going to do the Great Foe Felled defeated screen, and we'll add a couple other things in with that as well. And then we're going to discuss some like simple mock level layout design. And then we're going to get back to doing some more character like player abilities like the running attacks, the jumping attacks. Give our kit a bit more versatility so that when you're running through these areas, you have a bit more than just a light attack. I don't know if you've noticed too, but also when you try to do a combo, it doesn't feel too great right now. That's because Elden Ring and Dark Souls use something called input queuing. So that makes it so if you try to do a combo attack after you've already attacked, it will remember that you've pressed RB and it will press it for you at it whenever it's possible to do a combo. So basically right now you have to combo at the perfect time, so it ends up you feeling like you have to spam the right bumper. But in the future we'll make it so if you click it within a second or two of the combo being active, it will just do it for you when it can. And we're going to do that too with roll queuing and all that stuff too. That'll make it feel a lot better. But yeah, guys, next time we will do the last portion here of the UI. We'll do the Great Foe Felled. Thank you very much for joining me, and obviously a large and special thank you and shout out to my patrons. It is because of all you lovely individuals I get to keep doing this, and I love doing this. I hope you guys all have a lovely weekend, and I will talk to you all next week.